you ever met someone who is so beautiful you are at a loss of words? Or have you had an experience that leaves you breathless? I'm still at a scarcity of definitions to begin to capture what Mount Rwenzori was like. In 2016, the Babishainiwe Poetry Foundation launched its Poetry in Nature series. Annually, we travel towards Uganda's most scenic environments, with poets expressing themselves in verse against the backdrop of mountains, lakes, forests. The definition of Uganda's undefined beauty, unexplored territories, unparalleled natural experience. In 2016, this was launched where we traveled to Kasese in western Uganda and had a 6-hour nature walk across Mountain Rwenzori. In 2017, it was poetry at Mabera Forest. 2018, poetry at Sipi Falls. 2019, poetry by Lake Bunyonyi. This year, June 2020, we should have had poetry by the Crater Lake, which we have postponed to a later date. In 2016, a bunch of us traveled to Kasese, 6 hours west of Uganda. And we hardly knew what we were going to experience. One of us had traveled to the peak of Mount Rwenzori and she shared her extraordinary tale. But for the rest of us who hadn't been, when we arrived at the camp, the base camp, and our guide led us, Mount Rwenzori is almost like the Garden of Eden with a veil of flora that just opens before you step inside paradise. That's what it is. Untamed beauty. It's an unparalleled experience. There is an extraordinary amount of exquisite, this experience where you are touching the core of what makes you realize life is happening. When we walked, just looking at flowers that were growing wild, hearing birds chattering, seeing footprints of animals that had walked across before, being told that Mount Rwenzori is home to species only found in that area, seeing a 3-horned chameleon, indigenous only to the Mount Rwenzori area, climbing up the ladders higher and higher, exploring what many have not yet ventured into. I'll tell you, going to Mount Rwenzori, learning about the snow-capped peak and the snow that melts, leaving you with crystal clear water, a purity that is hardly experienced these days. All that, seeing Eden in its wildest and most beautiful, most exquisite state, knowing that Uganda is a home to such finesse, and yet there are few people talking about it. Knowing that I was part of an adventure that I'd never experienced before and still never had, it's still impossible to define. When we walked across Mount Rwenzori and we had this snow-capped melted water just holding it in the cusp of our hands and seeing its purity, crystal. That's the definition of crystal clear water. I thought, where are the people talking about this experience? If you have climbed Mount Rwenzori, congratulations to you upon this fabulous experience. If you want to go on a nature walk, I highly advise domestic tourism, go to Mount Rwenzori first. When we kept on walking through, I thought to myself, look at these happy animals. Look at these cheerful sounds. No one is bothering them because they are at home in a place that has not yet been polluted by man's insanity. Our tour guide, who's a Mukonjo from the area, told us that his father was the first Mukonjo man recorded to have climbed the peak of Mount Rwenzori. How's that for a history that you'll never read about? I was proud of that fact. His son likewise follows suit and takes tourists on guides to the peak and back. This tour guide also told us about how men earlier on used to carry women across parts of the mountain as a show of their prowess, to show that they were worthy of being husbands. How is that for more indigenous tales, more culture, more knowledge of actual history, folklore, hearing it from the mouth of people who live there? That experience and others, and sharing poetry with them and stories from where we're from, it just showed me that when you're combining art with nature, you cannot be false about it. It comes from a place that is deep within. And to discover who you are from deep within, you have to go further away from the falsehoods that separate us from who we are. So go further away from urban insanity, further away from your chores and schedules and busyness and to-do lists. When you go further and further away from all of that, you're able to identify who you are and whom you want to be. And I believe the best place to do that is against nature. Please go to Mountain Rwenzori. As we kept on walking and listening and hearing and being still and listening to what's important, nature, God's voice, that to me spoke volumes of what peace is, but not really peace, which is almost impossible to define, but just being able to be in a place where I'm not bothered by daily schedules, but just listening to the chorus of indescribably perfect nature. How is that? Butterflies and birds and small animals. We saw a three-horned chameleon, if I haven't mentioned that before. Powerful experience. If you want to find out who you are, go further away from what separates you from who you truly are. The further away you go into nature, into what connects you with beauty and intrinsic value. Oh my goodness, do that. Do it for 3 days where you're still just listening to God and hearing more about your own worth and value and where you want to be. Rest is important. When you're resting, go out in the nature. Uganda has so much to offer. It has a profound impact on where you're supposed to be in life. Take a rest from this insanity of ours. Take a rest and come back reinvigorated. I can't wait to travel to Mount Rwenzori again. Not to the peak, not yet, but definitely a nature trail with my family. I cannot afford to hold this experience to myself. I must share it with others. God bless you. Share your own nature and tourist experiences with others. There is so much we can learn from each other.